Hello students, this is Mr. Martin, and today we're going to talk about Chapter 10, Climate Change. Now, geographers and other scientists try to decipher past climates based on clues that are left on Earth. For example, palm fossils or petrified wood. There are two methods for long-term climate reconstruction, and long-term means millions to hundreds of millions of years. Those methods are ocean sediment cores and ice cores. Now, ocean sediment cores are where scientists go out in the ocean and drill down and take a sample of all the different layers of sediment on the ocean floor. When scientists take ice cores, they also drill down into ice to see all the vertical layers of ice over the millennia. Now, from these two samples, climatologists have found that if you look at this is 60 million years ago. And over time, the climate got hotter and hotter and hotter on Earth on an average annual temperature, 25 degrees, going towards 30, and then the Earth started to cool over millions and millions of years. This dark area is expanded out for the last 5 million years. So over the last 5 million years, the Earth has gotten colder and colder. And here is where we are today. Now, when you're talking millions of years, this upswing is very, very rapid. But if you look over time, the climate naturally fluctuates up and down, which is why there's argument in the scientific world of whether or not global warming is happening because of things that people are doing or because the Earth naturally vacillates up and down in average temperature. So if we look at Earth's long-term climate history, we know from ice cores that the years that have high carbon dioxide or methane also have high temperature trends. So there appears to be a direct correlation between these greenhouse gases and increased temperature. Do you see that over time? How every time we have a spike in greenhouse gases, we have a spike in temperature. Now you can also look at short-term climate reconstruction, which means hundreds or thousands of years. So basically, in Earth terms, very short term. And with these things, we use radiocarbon dating and analysis of tree rings, speleotherms in caves, and coral reefs. Now, carbon half-life dating is when you look at any object which is very old and you actually analyze the carbon in the object, because carbon over time will decay. And every piece of carbon, the half-life is 5,730 years. So you can actually tell how old something is based on the decay of carbon in it. You also have tree rings where wet years are years where the tree grew a lot, and then dry years are years where the tree grew a little, which can give you hints into past climates. We also have speleotherms, which are similar to tree rings, but they are layers of stalagmites and stalactites in caves that each year that it's particularly wet, more water drips on them and they become thicker in those areas. If it's a dry year, you'd have smaller layers. And corals act the same way based on the amount that a coral reef grows over time. So scientists can drill out a segment of coral reef and estimate the climate in those time periods. So when we look at Earth's short-term climate history, which is about 20,000 years of temperatures, you see that 20,000 years ago it was much cooler, then it got warmer and then cooler, and then we've been just meandering about in this area for the past 10,000 years. These past 10,000 years is pretty much the extent of all of modern human history that we have archived. So people have only known the Earth as it is now. So the climate does naturally fluctuate. That is because of the variability in the sun and sunspots and our distance from the sun with our Earth's orbital cycle. Also continental position and topography. Because as we know, millions of years ago, the continents weren't in the spots where they are today. And also atmospheric gases and aerosols that man has introduced to the atmosphere. So this is the idea that at one point, if you remember from other classes, it's called Pangaea, and all the continents were together. So 500 million years ago, the continents were compressed in different areas, which caused different patterns of both ocean and air currents. And then as you see, as they migrated over and over time, you end up with what we have today, which is the world as we know it. Now, the evidence for present climate change are many things. One, sea ice is decreasing. Two, snow cover is decreasing. And three, glaciers and ice sheets are decreasing. Other clues, water vapor is increasing, air temperature is increasing, sea surface temperature is increasing, the air temperature over oceans is increasing, and ocean heat content is increasing, and sea level is increasing. So between these increasing things and decreasing things, as well as temperature models across the globe, we know that the climate is warming at present time. If we look at the global land and ocean temperature trends, now we're looking from the 1880s to present, over the last 140 years or so, there has been an upswing in the average temperature on the globe. Now that happens to coincide very much with the components of the carbon budget, meaning that carbon emissions from fossil fuel burning sources are increasing also at the same time. We can also see a difference in the climate when we look at sea ice. Here is the ice cover in the Arctic Ocean in 1980, and here is that same area in 2012. You can see a significant difference in the amount of ice that is accumulated, that is multi-year ice, on the North Pole. We also have retreats of glaciers, like Muir Glacier has retreated, where in 1941 it was a glacier, and by 2004 it's a lake. You can also see ice loss in Greenland and Antarctica. So all over the globe, both north and south, we do have significant ice loss during this period of time. So what are the causes of the present climate change? Well, most scientists agree that it's greenhouse gases that are making our planet rise at a rapid pace relative to other times in history. Those greenhouse gases include carbon dioxide, methane, nitrous oxide, and halogenated gases. So if you look over the last 50, 60 years, since 1960, over time, you've seen a significant increase in carbon dioxide emissions. In 2014, these were the countries that did the major carbon dioxide emissions, and they are the industrialized countries like China at 27%, United States at 15%, all of the European Union at 9%. So just as you'd expect, those places that are highly urbanized, have the world's largest cities, are also the largest carbon emitters. Now, this global warming that we are in a trend, an upswing, does increase the melting of ice caps, which also increases sea level projections. So if you look from 1800 to 2020, you have a gentle increase in sea level. And so the question is, how will this impact future? So for example, in Florida, if we had a meter more of water in all the oceans, most of the southern tip of Louisiana would be underwater, and significant amounts of Florida would be underwater. So the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change believes that there's a 99 to 100% probability that these things are going to occur with our upswing in the climate. One, that cold days and nights will be warmer and less frequent over most land areas. Hot days and nights will be warmer and more frequent over most land areas. The extent of permafrost will decline. Ocean acidification will increase as the atmosphere accumulates carbon dioxide. And the global mean sea level will rise and continue to do so for many centuries. Now there's a 90 to 100% probability of occurrence of these things: that the Arctic sea ice cover will continue to shrink and thin, that the northern hemisphere spring snow cover will decrease, that the frequency of warm spells and heat waves will increase, the frequency of heavy precipitation events will increase, the ocean's conveyor belt circulation will weaken, and extreme high sea level events will increase, as well as ocean wave heights of mid-latitude storms. So many countries have worked to start to reduce our carbon dioxide emissions. Here are some things that you could do if you want to be on the global bandwagon to reduce your carbon footprint. Drive less, walk and bike more. Reduce, reuse, and recycle. Landscape wisely, plant trees that are hardy for our zone. Use renewable energy, like wind energy. You can also use Energy Star products. Use energy wisely. Because the goal around the world is to reduce 350 parts per million of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere.